Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
It's car con carne. Let's eat in the car. It's car con carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Osdol.
This right here is Car Con Carne. I'm James Van Osdol. Car Con Carne is sponsored by Exploding House Printing. They're located in Hermosa, a mere, 15 minutes from where I'm parked right now on the northwest side. Exploding House Printing's here for all of your screen printing, embroidery, and other merch needs. They're local, like I said, and they work with a lot of local businesses, local bands and brands. They've worked with Dante's Pizzeria, the Music Box, the Botanic Garden up in Highland Park, Meadwave, the Broke Downs. The list goes on and on. You can check out everyone they've worked with on their website, explodinghouseprinting.com. And Jonathan, he's the guy behind it all. He's been doing this for decades. I mean, this is his thing. He is married to the idea of screen printing and embroidery. So because he is so embedded with his work, he's going to do you right. Reach out to them for a quote because they offer boutique print shop quality at much lower large print shop prices. Check them out on Instagram at Exploding House, or like I said, explodinghouseprinting.com. So when you go to a concert, you're there for the music. Then once the house lights go down, you're pulled in by the experience, the lights, the video, the stage design, the architecture that elevates what's happening on stage. My guest today has helped create those experiential elements for artists like Fall Out Boy, Weezer, Panic at the Disco, Peppa Pig. Former Car Con Carne guest Rise Against. He's Robb Jibson, the founder and creative director of So Midwest, a Chicago-based production design firm that's evolved from lighting local stages to building massive high-tech tours. Robb, lovely to meet you in person.
Lovely to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
So your first employee was 10 years ago? That's when shit got real.
Yeah, that's when it seemingly sort of just kind of all began, and I don't know. It's been a crazy journey from there. I think once you're sort of responsible for somebody besides yourself, it kind of becomes a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And did this all start with Alkaline Trio?
No. It started a little bit before that, but I would say the sort of the first band that I broke with was a Southern California band called Incubus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They've done some stuff I've heard.
Yeah. They've sold some records here and there. Very nice fellas. Incredible.
And great abs, too.
Yeah, very great abs. And sort of maintaining even to, today. So I kind of got my start. I was working. I moved to Chicago 1997 from Western Michigan. I was born and raised in Michigan, and then lived in Alabama till my sort of mid-teens, and then my parents split up. We moved back with my grandma in Western Michigan, a little town called Muskegon.
I know
it's
exactly
on the Western
where it is.
Shore. Yeah, it's a great little town. Not a lot to do, and so we were always interested.
There's an ice cream place up there I went to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was delightful.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
I'm sure they have a few ice cream. Yeah. I think there's one called the Tasty Cove, actually, is the one we used to go to in high school. But Chicago, it's the nearest kind of cool thing. I had a friend in high school who played bass in my band. His brother was a stage manager for the Second City. He had an apartment, and he would let us just sleep on the floor, and he worked 24 hours a day at that job, so we had no adult supervision, and we kind of just fell in love with the town, so I always knew I wanted to end up here. I got a job. It was just kind of, I wanted to be a famous musician.
What was the name of your band?
Funny story. So we were trying to figure it out, and we were just doing the thing where you take a dictionary and you like flip your finger through the thing and you land on it. So we were Tetanus. And my drummer, his mom was a nurse, and she's like, "Why do you guys keep calling yourself Tetanus? That's tetanus." We were like, "I guess we're tetanus." So yeah, very terrible metal high school band.
But there's a lesson there about how great science is, that we are so far past tetanus in America that you don't even know how to pronounce it.
That's
we're in such a post-tetanus world that you have no clue how to properly say the word.
Well, let's hope we can keep it up. You
Yes.
know? So,
Hooray for vaccines, hooray for science.
yeah. So I have a funny story about trying to make my band more famous, right? So we were like trying to figure out how to become famous. We weren't very good at our instruments. We weren't very good at songwriting or melodies or putting any of it together because we were, 13. But on television, I would always see these pictures and videos of like, Motley Crue, Poison, and they'd be, David Lee Roth jumping, and behind him were these big arrays of colored headlights, right? Mm-hmm. Yellow ones, green ones, blue ones. And I said, man, all we need is some colored headlights from a car to make our band awesome. And so
that's all you need.
That's all you need.
Uh-huh.
So just down the way from my grandma's house, there was a junkyard, and we would just like jump the fence, jiggle out some headlights, collect them all, bring them home, take some wires, wrap them around the two posts, plug it into the wall, immediately explode. Trying to figure it out. We're like, well, it is from a junkyard. Maybe it's crappy. Go back, do it again. Oh, finally, we got caught because we weren't, very good criminals. Had a little bit of juvenile court system stuff, and there was kind of this list of things you could do. We got assigned some community service. So one of the things was there's a rundown theater downtown in Muskegon, Michigan called the Frauenthal Theater, and they needed help painting door frames, scraping gum off of seats, just fixing stuff, and I had to do my 60 hours. So I go in there, and I'm in there one day, and I'm cleaning something, and I see these guys down on the stage, and they're plugging in these car headlights, and they're turning on, and they're not exploding whatsoever. And so I just marched down the aisle, boom, hey, let me ask you a question. You plug that in, doesn't explode, why is that? He goes, well, why would it explode? It's this thing. And I explained to him about the car headlights. He goes, well, that's a 12 volt. This is back before halogen or LED lights and, xenon and all the modern stuff we have now. He goes, that's 12 volts. So this is 120 volts. And if you take 10 car headlights and you wire them, jumper, it'll add up to 120 and you'll be able to plug in your thing. And I was like, dude, thank you so much. And I just turned around, marched away, fully intending to go steal 9 more headlights. And he goes, well, wait a minute, kid, if you're interested in this stuff and you stick around here and you work for free, then, we'll teach you about it. And that I just kind of got bit by that little mathematical
thing.
Talk
about right place, right time.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So weird. So I kind of music has always been a passion, but that became all consuming in high school. And then I started working with the Stagehands Union out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I met some folks that were out of the local big lighting company here in Chicago. So my whole focus became sort of instead of being in the spotlight, I wanted to end up on the back end of it. And I moved here, got accepted, quote unquote, to Columbia College Chicago, which really in the mid-90s was just filling out the back page of the newspaper application that they had and coming up with some money and showing up here. So
I know that as a Columbia grad and former teacher there.
Yeah,
I'm aware.
Yeah, I don't know if they still have the syllabus as the newsprint thing, but it was really cool. And then the summer of 1998, so I did 97, 98, and I was interning at a lighting shop up in Wheeling, just working in the back warehouse, coiling cables, polishing stuff, and just, they would close down for the evening. I would stay after hours, read manuals, just fully immerse myself in it, and have a life. I was just that's what I was doing at the time. They took kind of notice of that. So after about 5 weeks, they said, hey, we need somebody to go out on tour. Do you want to go out on tour? And I'm, 19 years old. I'm like, well, I have to ask my mom. And she, and I call her up and she's like, is it safe? I was like, yeah, I think so. So that was the Backstreet Boys, 19 years old.
Stop it.
Climbing on a tour bus, traveling around just as a technician, and I'd say but it was such a crazy experience to go out. That band was on top of the world that year.
Right. I mean, if you're going to learn, you went right to the AP class. You skipped remedial and went right to AP physics.
It was, but if anything, that cemented that, the sort of roar of the crowd when house lights go or, and just like the jubilation and the sort of escapism that the audience is in. It just, all of those things clicked for me, and I've wanted to make a whole career out of it and a life out of it. So I have.
And from a strategic perspective, your odds were greater to be successful choosing that avenue than full-time musician.
There is a lot more work on the back end of the spotlight for sure. So then, that kind of progressed few years working in the shop. I had a killer opportunity. I was at Woodstock 99 as a lighting technician.
That seemed to go well.
Yeah, it was. To be so young and, now all the things that have come out about it, like we as the crew didn't experience obviously what was happening in the campground and all the rest of the place, but you could definitely feel the energy. But I was in one of the delay towers, like when all the rioting and all the crazy stuff was happening, and it just, I don't know. I don't think anything like that could happen again.
No.
Just the way that crowd management is now and the way the business is, it's not as, it's so much more regulated and thoughtful, and there's professionals that think about crowd management and all that stuff. So it was an incredible experience.
So then when did So Midwest start?
So Midwest is really a function of a company called Team Tours. And Team Tours, for your audience, is kind of like a business management for a lot of musical artists, but they also do sports athletes or, hockey players, baseball players. So one of the things that happens, let's say you're an NFL player and you sign a, $16 million contract for a 16-game season. When you go to Philadelphia and you play your football game, you make $1 million that day, just for easy math. The state of Pennsylvania withholds their state income tax out of the money that you made in that state that day. So as a result, Team Tours, when you're a touring technician, when I was going to Philadelphia, I was making $35 that day. But they were withholding the state income tax from every state that we played a show in and that withheld state income taxes. So end of the year comes, end of a few years later, I don't do my taxes. I'm getting audited by all these states that I don't live in, right? So I finally find a great tax helper, professional. He sits me down and he goes, really, if you're doing this on your own, you should become incorporated. And you can, there's benefits to it, protections and all these different things. And I was like, I don't know, man, I'm just a W-2 employee of these bands and going around. But it really solved that state income tax problem, right? So
that's crazy. So, you worked for a business that's based here, but because of the way the law works, because you're never in the same state, you have to play by their rules. If you physically do that labor, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are your own sort of entity, you obviously just are domiciled in the one place. But and again, I think this was specific to this company, Team Tours, because their system was set up to manage all of these folks that, perform their actions in different places. So great, let's incorporate. This is around 2008, and I just wrapped up the Light Grenade cycle with Incubus. And I was kind of just like distraught, and I'm thinking, naming conventions for me are like, there's such great names out there for companies. They're funny, they're quirky, they're memorable, right? At the time, I was kind of flirting with, in our business, there is there's sort of some managers, right? And I was speaking to one of the managers in LA, and he's like, you got to move out and you got to do this thing. And I had just kind of made the decision that, no, I'm going to stay in Chicago. We have some really great production people in Chicago, and we're so proud of it, right? And I was at the Empty Bottle seeing a show, and the business manager I was working with, he was really pressing me. He's like, dude, everything is set up to get this done. We just need the name of the company. Like, just, call it RPJ Enterprises or whatever, right?
No.
And so I'm walking out of the Empty Bottle. I think I saw Hot Water Music that night, if memory serves correct. And Elliot Dix, who was always the sound engineer, I think I was talking to him after the show, and I looked down and there's a little 1-inch button, kind of like the one I have on my jacket. And it just said So Midwest. And I thought to myself, that's so crazy. Like, we are all so Midwest. We talk about that Midwestern thing, whether it's the charm or the dialect or the food or the weather, right? And you think about the Midwest as this whole thing, like Oklahoma City, also in the Midwest, right? But there's just something specific about that moment and that time and my need for a name for the company.
Yeah.
And there you go. Bam. My tax shelter was born. And so to your point, now when we have, this whole thing was set up by a wonderful person on our team named Lily, and it's like, this is the place where she works and, has her career and does things. And to me, it's so crazy. And now when folks talk about it like it's a real thing, like it's a box of Kleenex, it's a real entity. It just, I don't know, makes me chuckle.
Oh, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, your roots are, from Michigan to Chicago, your roots are Midwest.
Yeah.
I think it's appropriate that that's how your business is reflected as well.
Yeah, and it's just it's something memorable, and it doesn't really transpire countries, right? Like if you're in Russia, nobody gets it. It doesn't, make any sense, but around here, people kind of get it. And to that end about staying here and doing it here, right? Like this is a smaller pond than New York or Los Angeles, and the fact that you've built a little bit of credence for yourself here, like that recognition helps carry to there, and it's weird. And it's not a slight to any other place or anything. It's us, and it's our Italian beef hot dog eating sensibilities, I guess.
I do love Italian beef and hot dogs. I don't know if that makes me a cliche, but
I just can't do it as much anymore. Like we have a thing around the studio, usually if we're going to sell something like a old computer or like a monitor or something, right? I don't want to deal with haggling, so we usually just trade it for hot dogs. I have a famous kind of like Craigslist ad where I traded like an IKEA Poing chair for 2 hot dogs or whatever, and that's always kind of our funny thing.
That's amazing. So where did I get Alkaline Trio from? It's like a linchpin moment.
Yeah, so kind of in that like early 2000s, we were just when I was at Columbia, I bike messaged to make money, right? Because I came here, but I really it was hard to exist here. So I did a lot of odd jobs. I bike messaged for Arrow. I washed windows, just all sorts of crazy stuff to sort of make it through the school year.
Wash windows like standing on a street corner with a squeegee?
No,
okay.
like rappelling down the side of the building on a rope with a bucket and a harness.
Yeah, okay.
So I met Matt through the bike messaging thing, and obviously like late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. And so a lot of bands, I actually don't even know if it's still there, but Superior Street Studios, they called it. It's at California and Chicago, right?
Still there.
Yeah. So a lot of bands would rehearse there, and so it just kind of became the hangout spot. And, I was obviously going off and doing all these tours when I was teching, and then after I got involved with Incubus after Ozfest 2001, I was designing. So I would come home and they'd be like, well, we're going to go do a run. It's like us and the Lawrence Arms, and we're going to drive to Thunder Bay in a van and do all this stuff. And I was like, let's go. So I was doing kind of this like big level, A-level touring, and then, driving in the van with the band and hanging out. And I loved it. So, there was
what an exciting time to go out with those 2 bands you just mentioned in particular.
Yeah. It was right when everybody was so full of energy and optimism and hope, and so incredible time. So anytime I could, I would try to do Alkaline Trio tours, in between, and just hang out. And I had a lot of fun. We went to Europe, we've been to Australia, Japan. Touring in Japan with a band that size is amazing because it's not like the big, convoys of buses and stuff. It's literally a promoter who's having you sleep on his floor, and you're playing a club at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday to like a couple hundred people at that time. They do much better now these days, but yeah. So
all right. So what is the daily business of So Midwest? I mean, because I talked about stage design and lighting and the people you worked with. It seems like you have your arms around a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So a couple of things. When I was younger and kind of coming up, I was landing these bands, right? Like I went from Incubus to My Chemical Romance to Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, right? And I noticed that the people that I was winning those jobs from, or the people I were competing with, were people in their 40s and 50s. And I just kind of thought, wow, I don't want to be competing in that when I get there, right? So I better have some other stuff figured out in time. But really around, I would say 2007, 2008, I started noticing that every creative conversation we were having about how these shows were going to look were no longer about smoky beams of light or this cool staging thing or like an ego riser, right? It was all about motion graphics and, video content and kind of like these short 3-minute films that accompany the music and are really kind of like little narratives that, follow each song. And it was the technology that was allowing...
This is stuff that we don't think about as concert goers. As you're saying this, I'm like, of course this had to start at some point, 2007, 2008, whatever you said. And I take that stuff for granted when I see it live.
100%. Well, it's funny because I always kind of tell my friends and colleagues, it's like, we're competing with each other. We're being like, oh, this person did this, or, being catty against each other's art. But then really, and we're, recording this on Belmont Avenue in Chicago today, and like, there may be a guy walking by and he just thinks whatever our entire passion and career and art just probably comes with the United Center. It's just like built in, just lowers from the ceiling. And, so it's kind of one of those very nuanced things, but really it's about moments, and it's not like the video content or the lighting or the staging or any of it needs to stand out on its own and upstage the music. But it's like when you can really make it click and create an environment where somebody has a memory and was able to engage in escapism and just get away from their lives and go enjoy, right? That's the magic of it. So it was around that time that motion graphics really started becoming the focus, and it was because the tech of the screens or the projectors, or now it's LED walls, right, was getting advanced to the point where it could be set up in a morning before a show, or it could be traveled with, right? So I kind of thought to myself, well, I better really get into this and study it, because it's going to be the biggest visual part of, the work that we do and the way we go. And so I went back and studied animation at the School of Art Institute a little bit, no degree or anything, but just, kind of understood the fundamentals. And then, so back to your long-winded question, getting back to, what the day-to-day is, we're really a creative studio, but mostly video content, motion graphics, 3D animation, and then packaging all of that up with the staging, lighting design, and we kind of, what I like to say about So Midwest and is just that, we're a little egoless. We're happy to... Because
you're Midwestern.
I think, right? It's like we're trying to just... We're happy to just do the content. We're happy to be a part of the lighting. We're happy just to help anybody want to execute and create something cool.
I love that. So is your clientele exclusively music?
No, not at all. I would actually say...
you mentioned sports, and I did mention Peppa Pig.
Yeah. So we got... And I'll tell you what, those kids shows are some of the toughest shows, just from they never turn off. There's no blackouts. You can never fade out, right? Our first one that we did was Baby Shark Live, and I tell you, animating bubbles for 60 minutes that can never jump or skip or change, right? And you're dealing with somebody's very recognizable and, brand intellectual property, so you can't really modify it. You can't mess it up, but you have to adapt it for the sort of scale and the size of the stage. They're incredibly difficult projects.
And you thought Megalomaniac had a hook. Then you went with Baby Shark.
Baby Shark Live. Well, and you'll laugh about this, but, normally when you're working in concerts, somebody might be like, hey, I see you're coming to town, you hook me up with some tickets. It'll be me and, my girl, or maybe me and my buddy and, our girls or whatever. So I think the biggest guest list that I ever got a request from a concert project would be like 6. Baby Shark Live, people are like, hey, me and the whole cul-de-sac want to come. Can you get me plus 19 on the list? And you're just like, holy cow, this is
there
insane.
Be a meet and greet?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So, as far as scale goes, you work with some pretty freaking large artists. Back in the day, there was Alkaline Trio and Lawrence Arms. In the present day, are independent bands in your world, or are you strictly big game hunter?
No, we're actually... So one of the things I learned on those very first tours in the late 90s it would always say, today's openers are tomorrow's headliners, right? I'm actually, and hopefully maybe even this podcast can help me, I'm a big fan of Sincere Engineer. Mm-hmm. We did Riot Fest after show with Alkaline Trio a couple years ago, and she opened. And like, I've still been trying to get in touch with her to be like, hey, we're right here. We want to help. We see you growing. We want to invest in it. So
Deanna's going to be on this show next month.
Incredible. Well, maybe you can mention it to her.
Okay, I will. We can all work together. We can all help each other.
100%. Yeah. No, but that's the thing is like, we same thing in the pricing world. Like, we're building some video content right now for a band called The Used, right? And
for a band called The Used.
They don't have...
For those of us who haven't listened to music for the past 25 years, oh, that band.
Well, it's all these 20-year anniversary nostalgia things that are happening, right? But, we're happy to do it, and we don't necessarily have the same scale as we do for the sort of more like, Amazon Studios kind of things that we're involved with. So, but no, I kind of just don't say no. So when people call and they're like, hey, we have a trade show and we want to do a hologram, or we want to do this crazy projection mapping thing, which is something we got involved with in the pandemic, but because we know how to animate and we know how to work at scale, right? We got involved with all the immersive Van Gogh, cool. Immersive Disney stuff. So it's really just, and I would say to your point of like the smaller or, up and coming bands, it's like, because the tech and the ability to have this art form at the lower levels, it's almost like it's infiltrating everywhere, right? Like you see, go see, there's a local regional band, Seventh Heaven. They've got a rival to, any A-level concert tour production, and you're just like, holy cow.
It's true. So as you were describing what happens on stage, what you put together, I said the word at the beginning of this episode, I think it's valid, experiential. You want people to check out. Yeah, life's hard. The world's scary. Like when I go to a concert, I want to just be immersed. And that's what you're creating. How closely are you working with the artist's vision? Are you working with a manager? Are you sitting down with the artist and like having them do a brain dump on you?
It really depends. At times we're fortunate, and specifically with some of the acts we've been with for a long time, we have that relationship and that sort of level of trust. So when we start out, and nowadays it's 25 years ago me would kill me now, but it's all about kind of like we're just a facet of the marketing campaign, right? So whether it's the Spotify or what the album artwork is going to look like, or what the concert touring thing is. And concert touring, you have to remember this, it's not a very old business, right? It's only really 40 years old in a way, because concert touring was a way to sell more records when record sales were a thing, right? And then it flipped. The only way anybody made any money was by playing shows. Once, streaming and sort of digital downloads and all the, Napster, that whole generation of things happened. So much more emphasis, and then the touring product, as it were, became the focus of Live Nation, and so it and all the other kind of promoters, and and the bands want to invest in that sort of part of their marketing image. So when we're doing it right, when it's really clicking, it's not, we're like, we think that we have people's attention for way longer than we do, especially nowadays when everything is just like bing, 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 flashy, flashy, flashy. If we're marketing it and packaging it in a way, and storytelling, we're making the album artwork, the merch design, the concert tour, all of that stuff has a really unified theme, and it's all sort of presenting as one kind of cohesive vision. And so, we just did a pitch the other day for a band I can't mention because it's not awarded yet, and I'm not sure how it's going to go. But, normally we're doing these PowerPoint decks or these PDFs as kind of leave behinds. I actually said, let's just create a temporary Instagram, because this is where the audience is, right? And so we made a temporary Instagram. We showed what our thought of what the album art would look like, what the merch designs would look like, how the stage, symbolism would sort of portray into that and unifying theme, and they seem to really like it.
I'm sure the creative approach you took hooked them in, and then they saw the vision and they're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of sticking your foot in the ground that way, because you're going like, this is potentially what I think your album artwork should look like. And that has always been so different, or such a different just kind of like side piece. In the motion graphics world, sometimes we'll take nods from that stuff. But back to your point of how involved we are, the thing that always struck me, because I thought, okay, me and Pete Wentz, we're going to sit down and we're going to hammer this out. But, you get there and he's not a motion graphics artist, right? He looks at stuff and has references around, from the internet and stuff, but he's a bass player. He's a musician. He does a lot of different things in his business world as well. But, so it's kind of like you get it there, and then you get a concept and you go with it. And where you can build that trust is awesome. And so it really varies artist to artist. Some of them are very involved, very hands-on, and some of them are just like, I don't know, make it look cool.
Is there a difference if you're building a concept for a band that's, let's say, the 4 p.m. band on a touring festival, as opposed to a Fall Out Boy stadium headline tour? Is there a different approach you take for what you create?
100%, right? One of the things that I always tell a band that's playing, who has the biggest font on the poster is, we probably don't need to put your name on the screen, right? People know who they bought the ticket for.
Great point. Yeah.
But if you're the 4 p.m. band, we probably definitely do need to put your name on the screen, right? So that if somebody took a photo of it, they can remember what it was, or,
That seems so basic to hear you say it, but yeah, I mean, that's stuff you need to think about.
100%. And so, a lot of times it's really just about making, and we're not here to overstep, the music or any of it. We're here to just really package it up and make it all more of an experience. So, to that point, a band that's playing at 4 p.m. probably doesn't have a lot of need for production. But I'll tell you, and we've had a long-standing relationship with another Chicago band called Chevelle.
You're introducing all these bands that we've never heard of them before.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of younger folks that haven't. But the drummer and I met at a music festival, I think around 2010. I was working with one of the headlining acts at the festival, and they had a tour bus set out, and Sam is into cars and motorcycles. And they were touring around a couple of like really awesome Italian motorcycles at the time, him and his drum tech, because they would play a show and then they would go and they would have their bikes and they would like not get on the bus and go ride,
That's
and
the
then
way
just
to do
meet
it.
up. Yeah, it was really incredible. So, I was out there talking to him. I had no idea who he was. He's like, "Oh, what do you do here?" And I was like, "I work for this band." He's like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm a drummer." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And then he told me the name of the band, and I was like, oh, man, I feel like a jerk. Like, I probably should, especially because of the Chicago connection, right? So, fast forward, we were friends for 6 or 7 years, and then kind of finally it was like, hey, you want to work with us? And I was like, I don't know, man. Adult friends are really hard to make. I would never want to jeopardize my,
My God, that
friends.
is the truth.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we become friends from this, because
I hope so too.
they're hard to make.
Yeah. So, we kind of, I think our first tour was in 2015 or 16 with them, and it's been a really great relationship. We definitely have learned to keep the business and the personal, separate, but, talk about just a band that kind of gives us complete, his brother Pete really is, he's a little more involved in kind of the, that side of the touring, the music and the look and everything, but they trust us, and it it's a huge responsibility, but we are very honored to have that trust and work with them. But to that point, they're typically a direct support band, so they have the hardest slot of the day.
Yeah.
They play when it's dusk, but it's dark when they end. They are typically, there's, some percentage of the audience that bought a ticket because of that band, not just the headliner, right? And then, we need to put on a show, but we also need to get all of our stuff off stage in 15 minutes.
Right.
And load it up in a truck. So it's an interesting challenge, but we definitely have executed at a high level. And, it's crazy. One of the music things that is going on right now is like these bands that are big right now and that are bigger than they ever were when they, like the Deftones are massive. I did 2.
Their records are in Target right now.
I know. Isn't it insane? But I did 2 tours with the Deftones, kind of one right when they came back after the bass player passed away, and then the Koi no Yakan tour cycle of 2012. And, we were playing like really small clubs and trying to build the thing back up, and they're just massive now, and it's so crazy. But that genre of music, even with the Chevelle guys, they're poised to this latest record that they just released is so great and such a mature part of their sound, but they've always stayed true to their thing.
Always.
And it's just really happy for them, and they're great fellas.
I haven't crossed paths with the Chevelle guys in years, but I will say, in the spirit of what your business name is, those guys to me are textbook Midwest.
Yeah.
Like, they've got that Midwestern humility. They're very humble and just low key and cool, and they go in and they take care of their business. They knock it out every time.
I don't think they ever have a bad show. I'm biased, of course, but they rehearse, so much. Like, every time I talk to them, they're rehearsing. They play for the love of it, and they pour it in. So, and they have the means to live anywhere they want.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
And they choose to stay right up here in the northern suburbs. So it's pretty cool.
Well, lots of rural roads out like in the Grays Lake area where you can drive really, really fast.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is appealing to them.
They do like that. We typically, on Sundays when it's nice, we get together and we'll meet at the full moon at 41 at 8 a.m.
Oh my
on
God,
Sundays.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And then
Which now has gaming.
Oh, yeah, I bet. I don't know if I've been there since we usually don't go in.
Okay.
It's just a meetup in the parking lot.
Well, if you're looking for a Patty Melts or a Monte Cristo.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love diner food.
Yeah.
So if you and the Chevelle guys get hungry, knock yourself out. Have a Monte Cristo. It's delicious.
Absolutely.
It's French toast. It's meat. It's great.
Okay.
So knowing the kind of work that you do, none of this is stuff that can be done quickly. There's no quick anything to what you do. Like, whether it's creating video, rendering video, testing it out, building stuff. Like, are you ever overbooked to the point where it's like, oh shit, what do we do now?
Would you mind telling that to our clients? Because they sort of just think you put it in ChatGPT and it comes right out. Yeah.
No, I'm aware that the creative process in general is not a fast-moving thing, but to create these deliverables, not a quick turn.
It's not. We've got a couple of different ways that we approach it. Currently, as we sit here today recording this, we're probably as busy as we've ever been.
Well, thanks for taking time out.
Yeah, 100%. But it blows my mind, and I'm excited to keep growing it and pushing it, and seeing where it can be. It wasn't that long ago. It was like 3-4 years ago, 2022. Yeah, that we started getting we finally got to the size we could get group health insurance for people, right?
Nice.
And so it's very important to me to be able to provide that for people. Before, we were just sort of kicking some extra cash so they could get some marketplace plans, and the difference in what that's allowed people to just their quality of life is, I don't know. It's really cool. It's awesome to see it grow. It's awesome to see people build out of it. It's awesome to take care of people. Mm-hmm. So it's really rad.
It's a truism that when you invest in your people, they will commit to you.
100%. And, I don't know. It's a little tax shelter with a goofy name.
That is, it's providing infrastructure for the music industry, which I think is so cool. And this is a topic, one of the many reasons I wanted to sit down and talk, is just because this is a topic that no one really digs into. It's just kind of part of what happens. You're just part of the fabric, and I wanted to learn more about it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to speak about it. And, there's so many interesting moments that I reflect on. And, I'm not quite that old. I turned 47 this year, but I'm not quite that young. And so, I've been fortunate. I got to do a lot of things in the early part of my career. It strikes me that we're sitting here on Belmont Avenue today, just down the street from Electrical Audio. Mm-hmm. 2004, I got a call from a friend named Botch Billions here in town. It's not clear if he's the manager, but Stint, the band, mm-hmm. Louisville, Kentucky band, was getting back together for a reunion series of shows. And probably one of my most favorite projects I've ever been a part of. I was really hired to be the lighting inhibitor to make sure that no stage lighting happened.
That's amazing.
Because, they're the music is, if you're not familiar, maybe if your audience is familiar, go check it out, please. It's
Spiderland.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, made just down the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget, one of my proudest achievements is being berated by Steve Albini in the dressing room at the Park West, right? Because he was upset. I think he just, R.I.P., don't want to speak evil of the bereaved past, but, at the time he was just really mean to those guys. And I think he just thought Well Enough should be left alone, and they had no right getting back together, and they had
that
no
sounds
right.
Yeah, that sounds on brand.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just really, and I remember standing in the dressing room, and it's like Corey from Touch and Go was there, our tour manager was there, I was there, Botch was there, and he's like pointing his finger, and he's like, look what you've done. You have a fucking, sorry, I don't know if I can swear or not, but tour manager, you've got a lighting guy, and he's just like pointing at me, and I was just like, he's like, what's your biggest problem? You have to decide what color to make Cher's hair.
Oh my God.
So, and funny enough, so that was 2004. We played, you can't even imagine the places that the Slint reunion tour would play, right? We played this traditional theater, like vaudeville theater in Louisville. It was like such a seminal homecoming for those guys, their family, their friends. Sure. It was such an emotional night. And then we go to Europe, and we're playing like the ATP festival, which is this amazing, crazy festival. And like literally one of the things that I was responsible for on the tour, Britt, the drummer, had a lamp. And if he thought that it got too dark because those guys didn't want to be seen, and they kind of wanted just like the lighting to be low and still, right? Again, the lighting inhibitor, he would just turn on a lamp. So like worldwide voltages, I had to make sure that the lamp worked
right,
everywhere,
of course,
right?
Overseas, yeah.
That's right. So
Mm-hmm.
so my knowledge from my car headlights all the way back to my teenage years really came in handy. But still to this day in my kitchen at home, there's a set list from that show written next to, I think the song Pat says, like cue number 2 is When You Think It Is, because when you're trying to figure out these cues in like 15/16 time or whatever the insane time signatures these songs are in. But another great Chicagoan that was on that tour as a modern engineer was Jeremy Lemos. He's, I think currently on tour with Mavis Staples, but he's just a Chicago, personality that's always been around, toured with Sonic Youth and all these other bands. So, there's a few of us out there in the Chicagoland.
By the way, Mavis Staples still absolutely kills it on stage.
Yeah.
I saw her maybe a year ago at the auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about like forgetting the world for a couple hours. Like I was able to check out completely. That was a communal, lovely experience.
And what an incredible venue to see a show in, period. Like that's a place where just the architecture,
the architecture is so cool. I will say, if you are agoraphobic, is that fear of heights? You don't want to sit in the high balcony.
100%.
That is a stressful climb.
We did a band called the Swell Season last year. Had a little package and programming out with them, and they played the auditorium, and I went down and saw it. And it's beautiful. It's just tasteful and exactly what it needs to be.
Tasteful. So Midwest is the company. If I have a lot of musicians who listen and watch, if someone wants to reach out to you and just kind of spitball some stuff, how do they track you down?
SoMidwest.com. That's probably the easiest way, or just come find us at a show, hang out. We're right here on Elston Avenue, so come have a coffee, take a look. We're always happy to hang out. We've got some guitars in the office, and I'm sure all our employees would love us to just annoy their workday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's super cool what you're doing. Thank you for breaking it down. And are you going back out with anyone anytime soon, or are you mostly landlocked to Chicago these days?
So I made a decision in 2018 to sort of hang up my touring shoes. I figured
'Cause that's a grind.
97. Yeah. I just, part of it was there's so much opportunity afforded to you, of course, but there's so much that you miss. Mm-hmm. Weddings, funerals, birthdays, right? Relationships. And so I kind of decided in 2019 that I just needed to figure out the next thing. It's one of the hardest things is to, talk to one of your old touring friends that's still out there doing it And
You
just
get a
be
little FOMO.
Yeah, well, you get a little FOMO, and then also, it's just like, I'm not making a decision for you. It was just the right decision for me, and so at the time, I think when peak travel years was, I lived actually in a storage unit because it was so cheap. You could just set up your bed, run your extension cord down the hall, plug it in, right? But I was only home 40 days a year, right? I was just out on the road nonstop. So, now I'm traveling probably a couple times a month. We go out, we get the project started, whether it's a music project or, like a experiential kind of thing. But, it's I'm also enjoying being a Chicagoan, being a neighbor, going to my community meetings, just, being a person that's here. And that's not something I got to do in the first part of my career because we were gone so much.
Yeah, now you have more time to trade goods and services for hot dogs.
100%.
100%. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.